So if I were to ask you, are you lonely? How would you answer? And if you answered out loud or inside your head just now, you're part of the epidemic. And if you're watching this on stream and just pause the video to discuss it with your viewers, you're part of the epidemic as well. Oh, and thanks for unpausing the video and watching the rest of it. I appreciate you. So how did we get here? Well, it's simple. Money, convenience, time. Loneliness and parasocial behavior isn't exactly a new concept, but it has definitely gotten much more commonplace to a frightening degree nowadays. Just to compare, if you were to look back in time, loneliness was considered a luxury. You essentially had to be able to afford to be lonely, because time is money has always been a concept. So if you wanted to have time away from people, that means you had to have had enough money in order to afford that time to stay away from people. Especially when society revolved around interacting with people in order to get the money, you would have needed an abundance of resources, money, or status in order to have one of those two things, or a combination of them. And as time went on, the pendulum kind of swung harshly in the other direction, right? Now some of the most sought after and well-paid jobs involve you being alone or revolve around other people being alone, which brings me to the parasocial norms of today. So in the past, being parasocial was extremely inconvenient, right? Like you had to be at the right place at the right time with just the right amount of money. So if you thought someone was cute, talented, or just had a cool personality that you wanted to keep track of, you had to time TV appearances, maybe buy a ticket for a concert or show, buy some merch, or keep track of them in articles, right? Like in magazines, newspapers, or maybe the paparazzi's been following them around and spewing some nonsense about them. Like that was pretty much the only way to stay in the loop of their everyday life, pretty much. So in some ways, being parasocial back then still required you to be social in some way, shape, or form, right? Because your life pretty much had to revolve around whatever they were doing in their real life as well. And now if someone piques your interest, there's pretty much limitless ways in order to keep track of them, right? Like you could just do a quick Google search, you can go on YouTube, so it's super easy to always see what they're up to and always feel like you're involved with their lives or just have some way of interacting with them on an almost daily basis, right? And now, especially in America's economy, people no longer want to be like musicians or actors or some type of celebrity figure, right? They would much rather be an influencer or a streamer. Okay, so this next part ties in, okay? It might take me a second, but just let me cook. So when I hear people complain about both reactors or streamers, it's usually the same type of arguments, right? Like they deteriorate or devalue the things that they're streaming or reacting to, right? Whether it be a video game being played, a movie being watched, or maybe it's them going out in public and experiencing something in society that's intended to be an upfront personal experience, right? So the overarching argument that people use is that it's essentially a market replacement, but people kind of do whatever they want and they're unpredictable, so that really makes no sense. People just kind of do whatever for no particular reason sometimes, so you can't really use that as just argument to put a negative connotation on things people do or want to share with someone else. But yeah, I don't have a problem with streamers, right? Because they're just trying to be social and have fun. I don't see anything wrong with it. Like, as long as they stay courteous and don't have ill intentions towards the things that they interact with online, then I think it's fine. But here's where it ties in for me, right? Because my mind jumps to a much more insidious viewpoint. They try to argue that streamers and reactors are a market replacement potentially for the content they're interacting with, right? But what I don't hear people argue about, and what I believe, it's that they're not being a market replacement for the content. They're being a market replacement for people. And when I say people, it mainly means people in real life that you should potentially be interacting with. And of course, it can go for some online people as well, right? Because picture this, right? Let's say you have a favorite content creator, streamer, reactor, whatever, right? Now add up all the time you spent watching them, a person who's essentially just a random person on the internet that you're going to have no actual association with. And imagine if you spent that amount of time interacting with new real people in real life or solidifying friendships you currently have, how much extra time you could have spent socially interacting with those people. So even if you were to have spent, let's just say, a generous amount, right? Let's say 2 hours a day, 7 days a week, that's 14 hours a week, times 4, that's 56 hours a month that you could have used and reinvested into a real life relationship or friendship. So you see how it all ties together now, right? Because even though it is time you should theoretically be spending with someone in real life, it's also free and convenient. So like I had mentioned before, right? Money, time, convenience. So nowadays in our day-to-day life, right, being alone has never been more convenient, time efficient, and affordable than ever before in history. And with this generation feeling like we're working twice the amount of hours for half the amount of pay, We lack the energy, time, and money in order to live like we used to, at least what I think. But with all that being said, everything I said is essentially things that everyone kind of knew, right? Like if you live life long enough, you kind of see the pattern of the way society is kind of trying to hurt us into. But that segues me into possibly the coexisting bigger or just as big of a problem, which is denial and lack of accountability in our actions and what we choose to do. Although even knowing all of this, people still continue to be lonely. So why is that? Well, because people will always choose the path of least resistance. Some are willing to admit it, others aren't. People will almost always voluntarily choose to be lonely if it means they have the resources, time, and it's convenient to get the things that they want with minimal effort. So if you voluntarily choose the path of least resistance to where it constantly rewards you for being alone at the convenience of everything you want, and yet you're surprised when you're alone, you're not lonely, you're retarded. So we'll reap the rewards of being lonely, but then we want to complain about the loneliness epidemic. It's just like 90% of us understand what we're doing. We're just in denial and we don't want to admit it because, that would mean we have to take accountability for our actions and take a step to move forward and get out of the loop that we're stuck in, that we let ourselves be stuck in. But we don't want to do that because the path of least resistance, because time is money, right? And when we raise a generation kind of living by that motto, people are also more hesitant to actually make real life connections because it's like, what if that time investment doesn't really work out? It's like everything we do in our day-to-day life revolves around a transactional equation. But that's the beauty of life, right? You never know what the future holds unless you work on your present. So the best ending advice this video I can give is just simply learn to resist the path of least resistance. So if you're aware that your day-to-day life makes you more prone to being alone and you understand that, you have no one to blame for being alone except yourself. So to my viewers, do me a favor and always remember that you are the ultimate commodity. You choose how to spend yourself. So you remember your worth and enjoy your day. Thanks for watching.